In the shadows of ancient Rome, medicine wasn't just herbs and prayers. It was blood, warm, fresh, often still dripping. And the people drinking it, they weren't outcasts. They were citizens, patients, doctors. This isn't fiction. This is history. For centuries, the Romans believed blood, especially from fallen gladiators, could cure epilepsy, summon strength, and even restore a broken soul. What kind of world thinks a man's last breath can heal another? Let's step into that world. This is not the Rome from your textbooks. This is the Rome they tried to bury. Imagine the Colosseum, tens of thousands cheering, the midday sun beating down on blood-stained sand. But while most came for spectacle, some came to wait. Wait for a man to die, because in death they believed there was power. Gladiators weren't just fighters. They were seen as vessels of divine strength, their pain sacred, their blood holy. The moment a blade struck the heart, some in the crowd rushed forward, not to mourn, not to help, but to collect. With goblets, cloth, even bare hands. They'd scoop what they could, drink it on the spot, or preserve it for later, for healing. So how did this begin? It wasn't just Roman superstition. It was rooted in something older, ancient Greek medical theory. They believed the human body was governed by four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Too much or too little of any made you sick. So naturally, if you lacked blood, just drink more. The Romans took this theory and pushed it into the grotesque. They believed freshness mattered. That blood had to be warm, alive, taken at the moment of death. And the best source? A man who had fought bravely, a warrior, a gladiator. One of the most disturbing practices centered on a single disease: epilepsy. Romans were terrified of seizures. They thought it was a curse, a possession, a tearing of the soul. So when physicians suggested a cure, it had to be extreme. They told people to drink human blood, but not just any blood. The blood of a man who died violently. Gladiator blood became a medicine, sometimes sold in vials outside the arena, sometimes taken directly from the corpse, still warm. There are stories of epileptics pressing their lips to a dying man's neck, desperate, trembling, believing it would chase the demons away. Blood wasn't the only thing taken. Some Romans believed consuming a gladiator's liver could transfer bravery. Others sought the heart, thinking it contained honor. And for those too refined for raw meat, there was powder, skull powder. Cremated remains were ground into ash, sold by apothecaries, mixed into wine or honey, swallowed by those with headaches, tremors, or nightmares. A broken skull, they believed, could fix a broken mind. It wasn't science, it was desperation. Outside the Colosseum, there wasn't just bread and wine. There were vendors, selling blood, bones, teeth. A thriving black market emerged. Some even faked gladiator blood, using animal remains or painted wine. But the real thing, it was expensive. A drop of fresh gladiator blood could cost more than a week's wages. Only the rich could afford it regularly. But the poor, they waited at the arena's edge, hoping to steal a moment or a drop. And it didn't end with Rome. Centuries later, similar practices crept into medieval Europe. Executioners' blood was believed to cure disease. Dead man's fat was used as ointment. Even in the 17th century, nobles drank human blood at public executions, thinking it would rejuvenate them. Rome had started something, a legacy of blood as medicine, a ritual that outlived its empire. Today we see blood as sterile, medical. But to the Romans it was mystical, alive. They lived in a world where death wasn't the end. It was a transaction, a trade. And if someone had to die, someone else could live. Stronger, cleansed, healed, or so they believed. But this was only the beginning, because the Roman obsession with human remains would go even darker. They called it corpse medicine, not in whispers, not in shame, but as a legitimate form of healing. Rome was the cradle of civilization, but beneath the marble and philosophy was a hunger, not just for power, but for flesh. Doctors prescribed parts of the dead, crushed skulls for migraines, burnt brains for fevers, ground bones for muscle pain. It wasn't witchcraft, it was prescription, written in ink, approved by scholars, endorsed by the elite, and it didn't stop with blood. Roman apothecaries stocked what they called mumia, a dark, resin-like substance scraped from embalmed corpses, imported from Egypt. They believed it held power, preserved strength. Some even claimed it contained divine energy, mixed with honey, wine, or oils. They consumed it, applied it, worshipped it. The lines between medicine, magic, and madness blurred. But the most disturbing part? They thought the manner of death influenced the cure. A man who died suddenly was believed to trap his spirit in the body, making his flesh more potent, more charged. Those executed publicly were considered ideal. Their pain made them medically active. So when someone was executed, people didn't just watch. They waited, with jars, with blades, with intent. In some cases, the executioner himself sold pieces, hair, fingers, teeth, and beneath it all, a belief that consuming death could reverse it. This wasn't limited to the poor or superstitious. Philosophers, aristocrats, even emperors, they engaged in it. They believed the body held power long after breath left the lungs, especially if that life ended violently. But how did this ideology survive? Because it worked, or so they thought. Desperate patients would recover after taking corpse remedies, not because the blood healed them, but because belief did. The placebo effect, centuries before science understood it. And Rome wasn't alone. The roots stretched deep, to the Babylonians, to ancient Persia, to early tribal rites. Rome just gave it structure, laws, markets, labels. What was once ritual became product, and Rome exported that product along with their empire. Even Roman soldiers carried dried blood with them into battle, to rub on wounds, to consume when injured. It wasn't just survival, it was spiritual armor. But the darkest chapter was yet to come. Some physicians began seeking younger victims. They claimed the blood of adolescents was pure, more vital. So they turned to slaves, children, orphans. Victims vanished, their remains turned to powder or stored in jars. All for the illusion of life. Rome's obsession wasn't random. It was driven by fear of death, of disease, of helplessness. And when people fear long enough, they'll drink anything, eat anything, believe anything. Even that another person's death could be their salvation. There are accounts of noble families keeping preserved remains in their homes, not to honor, but to use. Skulls displayed on shelves, dried hearts in hidden boxes, blood-stained cloths pressed to wounds. And in the temples, priests spoke of divine blood, bloodlines that carried the gods themselves. It wasn't just medicine anymore, it was religion. Some cults began to believe that drinking blood brought them closer to divinity, not just physical healing, but spiritual rebirth. The line between doctor and priest blurred. So did the one between patient and worshiper. And while Rome's power crumbled in time, this belief system didn't die. It transformed. Medieval doctors carried it forward. Renaissance thinkers rebranded it. Even today, fragments remain, in rituals, in metaphors, in horror. But back then, it wasn't horror. It was hope. Hope in a drop of blood. Hope in the dust of a bone. Hope that life could be stolen from death itself.